what's up, fantasy fans? As always, I'm Shay from the channel Zachary Shay. And today I'm going to bring you another top 10 characters from a different class of character. Kind of been basing it off of like the D&D classes or the stereotypical roles that different members of different parties make up in fantasy adventures. Like I did rogues and I did wizards, and today I want to do bards. Um, I, for one, am very fond of bards. I like those charismatic characters. Ever since I read Name of the Wind, I've been enamored by musician characters, and I think they're an integral part of the fantasy genre. So I'm gonna get into it. Top 10 bards. All right. So my honorable mention number one, and I'm going to include songs by them. If the character had certain songs or verses or poems that I thought were impactful. So my first honorable mention is going to be Dandelion or Jaskier from the Witcher series. Now he's an honorable mention because I have not read deep enough into Andrzej Sapkowski's series to put him higher. I was not a fan of the Netflix series. I was a fan of the games. But in both of those adaptations, which I think the games are more of a sequel than an adaptation to the books, but I thought Dandelion slash Jaskier was a phenomenal bard, very true to the bard type of character that is commonly portrayed in like D&D and other fantasy fiction, but I thought he was done really well. I think his songs are catchy. I think his relationship with Geralt is one of the highlights of the Witcher universe. And I haven't finished Last Wish yet. I've almost finished it like 3 times, and I think it might be the translation or something about Sapkowski's writing style just hasn't clicked with me yet. But I do want to give that series another try this year, and I do think Dandelion is one of the parts of that series that keeps me wanting to come back. All right, and my next honorable mention, which this may be considered a cheat because most would not consider her a bard, but her song is what ignited pretty much the plot of this entire series. And I'm talking about Io, wife of Darrow the Reaper from Red Rising. And I want to read um, a brief snippet of Io's song because I think it perfectly encapsulates the themes of Red Rising, which is one of my favorite series of all time. My love, remember the cries when winter died for spring skies. They roared and roared, but we grabbed our seed and sowed a song against their greed. My son, remember the chains when gold ruled with iron reins. We roared and twisted and screamed, for ours a veil of better dreams. And down in the vale, hear the reapers swing, the reapers swing, the reapers swing. Down in the vale, hear the reapers sing a tale of winter done. I kind of butchered that, but I think in this song, Io inspired Darrow, who would later go on to inspire all of the Reds and more than just the Reds. He would go on to inspire the entire hierarchy of Red Rising to fight against this golden oligarchy. And while her song didn't immediately incite a rebellion, it did propel our protagonist Darrow to where he needed to be the figurehead of this rebellion. And while I'm not usually a fan of female characters being fridged, I do think for the story that Pierce Brown was trying to tell and for how significant she is for the story, I think that this is not, an egregious example of this. I think Pierce Brown is a phenomenal writer. He writes amazing female characters. He just writes amazing characters in general, and I think he's my favorite sci-fi author of all time, and I am putting Io as my honorable mention for bards. All right, so my number 10 is going to be the character Belina from The Bound and the Broken, which I meant to bookmark this page, but so the reason Belina is at number 10 is she's only featured briefly in these first 2 books, and I have not gotten to Of War and Ruin yet. So there's a very good chance that she will climb higher on this list, but that's not where she's at. On summer nights when the moon paints the sky, on summer nights when your touch is all I know, when the stars shimmer in the sea up high and the warmth of your love holds me close. On summer nights I will hold on to your memory, when the air is warm I will sit beneath the old oak tree. For your arms I will yearn, for your voice I will hope, we will be side by side again, my love, on summer nights. Yeah, I think Belina is such a phenomenal character in this series, and I think from what I've heard, she shines even more so in Of War and Ruin. Um, but Of Darkness and Light really made me a Belina fan. She reminds me a lot of Dan from this series, and she's just a mischievous little fun character. So next up, I'm going to say Brooke from the manga One Piece. Um, I do believe Brooke is a lot of people's least favorite of the Straw Hats. Um, I thoroughly enjoy Brooke's character. I think he is a source of levity in the story, but he also. And while Brooke is this comedic character, I think he lends a lot of heart to the arc that he's introduced in Thriller Bark, and you know, his song to the whale I thought was really heartbreaking, and about his crew, and I thought his story was pretty heart wrenching for how comedic of a character he can be at times. And the next character I'm going to have Hap Gladheart from The Realm of the Elderlings by the brilliant Robin Hobb. And if you've read this series, again, I'm not going to get into spoilers, but a lot of people might be confused at me including Hap because he is a very frustrating character during the second of the three Fitz trilogies within the Realm of the Elderlings. In the Tawny Man trilogy, he's very frustrating at times. Like, he's just a bad kid. Like, he's not a bad kid at heart, but he doesn't listen to his dad, and he can be very frustrating. But in the third trilogy, I think his role as an older brother to another character that we get, um, like, really put him on this list. I thought that he was the best sibling B had, to be honest, the one that gave her the least amount of judgment, and that had the most um, love in his heart for her, more so than her blood siblings. It seemed to me as a reader. I thought Hap, the brief scenes we got with him in B, I thought he was a phenomenal older brother, and I loved seeing him sing songs to B. And there's one song he sings about Fitz and Nighteyes that I think just perfectly encapsulates their relationship. And it goes, when winter's clutch is cold and dark, and game is scarce and forests stark, the songster to the hearse retreats to warm his cheeks and icy feet. But on the hill and in the glen are hunters hardier than men, with lolling tongues and eyes that gleam, they surge through snow with breath like steam. For in the hunt there is no morrow, time does not wait, there is no sorrow, as blood spills black and snarls are rife, for life is meat and death brings life. um when he sang this song, it immediately put me in mind of, you know, like the Royal Assassin and Assassin's Quest, when Fitz and Nighteyes were young and you know, on the hunt. And it honestly, the first time I read that, it made me tear up. And he is my favorite bard within the world of the Realm of the Elderlings. Obviously it's not Starling. She's a terrible character. All right, so my number 7 pick is going to be Scanlan Shortholt from the amazing podcast episodic series Critical Role. Their first campaign, which is Vox Machina, which has actually gotten an Amazon Prime animation adaptation. And I think Scanlan Shortholt, like Brooke, like Brooke from One Piece, he's like a comedic character, but there are points in the story more so than Brooke, which is why he's higher on the list. Scanlan, uh, you're gonna really form an emotional attachment to him, and some of his scenes are very heartbreaking to listen to. And I think Sam Riegel, he it is very rare that a performer and a creator are speaking with the same voice. So this performance he is giving as Scanlan Shortholt, he is also creating the character while giving this performance, and I think that gives you a depth of character that you don't always get. And I just thought that the from conception to execution, Scanlan Shortholt, Sam Riegel just did an amazing job. All right, and then my next pick is going to be Hoid or Wit from the Cosmere, uh, which is Brandon Sanderson's interconnected universe. This is a man that needs no introduction. And while I do think Sanderson isn't as skilled as writing songs and poems as a lot of the other authors on here, I do think that Hoid fits that role of a bard. And I do think, while like I love Sanderson, and a lot of people complain that some of his jokes don't hit and some of his poems don't hit. Some of the stuff that he writes can, like some of Shalon's jokes, can come across as kind of corny. I actually think that that's gotten better with time. I think Sanderson, while he does have his, little follies as an author, I think he is one of the greatest fantasy authors of the modern era. And I think Hoid slash Wit is his consistently best written character in the entire Cosmere. He's not my favorite. I really love Adolin and Kaladin, but I'm just saying, it sometimes surprises me that the supposedly witty banter that Shalon has, you then look at Hoid and you're like, oh no, you can write witty banter extremely well. But Shalon's, especially like in book one and book two, was not as witty as like characters were reacting. Anyway, I think Hoid is extremely witty, extremely charming, and is the perfect bard character in the Cosmere. And he's like a mix of like Scanlan and Loki, and he's just a great character. I love him. My number 5 pick is a character that not a lot of people view as a bard, but I do, because I'll be damned if in Deadbeat he did not give Harry Dresden bardic inspiration. And the character I'm talking about is Waldo Butters, the mortician from Dresden Files, who kind of starts putting things together that people weren't dying in natural ways, and there were paranormal entities related to these deaths. But he is a polka player. He's a huge fan of polka music, and he likes to perform it. And I think what Harry says to him, like when Butters is starting to get anxious and scared, is he says, "Polka will never die." And I remember as he was making Butters chant that, and I was listening to the James Marsters performed audiobooks, and he performs the character of Waldo Butters so well, and his relationship with Butters and Harry. And I just really enjoy the relationship between Harry and Butters. Butters isn't a character, like Dandelion from Witcher, where you see him interact with our protagonist like every single book. But when you do see him interact with Harry, I think he's great. All right, so number 4, we get to a character that I thoroughly enjoyed and that I don't think gets enough love, and that is going to be Tam Hashford from Bloody Rose, book 2 in the band series by Nicholas Eames, which this is a series of standalones. I believe it's supposed to be a trilogy. He might go on and do more, but book 1, Kings of the Wild, is based on like 70s rock music. It's inspired specifically by Led Zeppelin, I believe. And then I believe Bloody Rose is inspired by Queen, but do not quote me on that. I'm not a big rock person, so I don't know. But so in Bloody Rose, you follow the band of Fable. In book 1, it was Saga, and it was about all these old men getting the band back together. Fable is a very different story. You follow Tam Hashford, who is she is joining the troupe as a bard. They already have all their other positions filled for their adventuring band, and she is the audience's viewpoint into the band of Fable. But I think that it goes a step beyond that. She's not just an audience fill-in. I think her relationship with Cura, her relationship with Rose, her relationship with the whole band, I thought was really well done. And for a standalone-ish book that I read, I don't know, like 4 years ago at this point, yeah, I'm pretty sure I read that when I was still in the military, so it's been a hot minute. So for a character I've read that long ago, and for her to still stick out from that standalone book, I thought she was just really well done. All right, so my number 3 pick is going to be, kills me to say this, but it's got to be Kavoth the Bloodless, or Kavoth Arlidan's son from the Kingkiller Chronicles. I have very mixed feelings about Patrick Rothfuss. I think he's a genius, but I also think he needs to be a little bit more humble and a little bit kinder to his fans, who could also be kinder to him. This is not an attack on Patrick Rothfuss. I'm a fan of his work. I'm not a fan of the way he conducts himself, but I am very much a fan of his writing. And I think Kvothe, you cannot, like, even if you are the biggest detractor, the biggest Rothfuss hater, I don't think you could reasonably make a list of top 10 bards and not have Kvothe at least in the top 5. I think he's just a great, great bard, and he would have been my favorite bard from the time of me being 12 to me being about 20. But, well, we're going to get into number 2, which is a character I discovered recently, and that is Erathon Fallen, Master of Shadow, from Janny Wurts' magnum opus, The Wars of Light and Shadow. While he has many things, he's a prince of a forgotten nation on this world of Paravia, and he's also the Master of Shadow who inherited these powerful mage abilities. At his heart, he doesn't want to be a ruler, and he doesn't want to be a powerful mage. If Erathon was left to his own will and his own wants, and was not burdened by the responsibilities that he inherited, he would be a bard. He would be a man devoted to music and the arts, and that's truly who he is. I think Erathon is just a music loving hippie who got dragged into this war by his bastard of a brother. I know Erathon's technically the bastard, but Lysair's just a son of a, like, Erathon's a awesome person, and I love his character. And Janny Wurts is able to write 2 brothers, one of which I could not love more, and one of which I could not hate more. All right, and my number 1 pick. Now, just like every list I've made, my Wizards list, my Rogues list, and now my Bards list, every single time I go over Malazan Book of the Fallen, which is my personal favorite book series I've ever read, I always tell you there were multiple picks from this series that would have been in the top 10 list. The same is true for Bards. Both of these Bards, if I didn't have one entry per series rule, both of these Bards would be in my top 10. Probably both of them would be in my top 5. I'm the one that probably should have won, that did not win, that to me is probably the best Bard in Malazan, is Fischer Keltath. Or is it Fischer Keltath or Telcath? Fischer. Anytime you see a poem or a song as an epigraph on one of Erikson's chapters, you know you're about to get one of the best written poems of Erikson's career. Every time he just gives the best poems to Fischer. And Erikson, he could, all these poetry books that are selling like crazy, that girls just be buying up hella poem books. Erikson could write one of those, and he would do like, I'd buy it. I think, usually his poems tie into his world, but I think he would have had a career in poetry if he wanted to. His poems are truly phenomenal. But I did not go with Fischer. And also, those poems do an amazing job of introducing you to the mindset and the history that Fischer has lived. So when he actually appears in the narrative later in the series, you have a better grasp of who he is as a person. And then once you experience his character, his songs and poems on a reread are given a lot more depth, that you've actually read his character now. But my number 1 pick it has to be Fiddler from the Bridge Burners. Sergeant Strings in the Bone Hunters. Just, he has a couple names, but I think most people think of him as Fiddler. The name Sergeant Strings really didn't stick around that long, but Fiddler, he doesn't perform a lot of as many songs as Fischer wrote, and I think even one of his most emotional scenes of playing his instrument, he was playing a Fischer song. But I do think, well, Fiddler is a bard character while also being a sapper, which is kind of like a ranger within the Malazan military, but he's still technically a bard character, and he's one of my favorite characters that I've ever read in my entire life. Like, probably he's in the top 2, I'll tell you that much. And while Fischer, I think, is the better bard, I think Fiddler is the better character that is a bard. So on that technicality, and for my own personal enjoyment, I'm going to put Fiddler as number one. And I do have, this is my favorite quote in all 10 books of Malazan Book of the Fallen. And this is Fiddler saying this. And so we weep for the fallen, we weep for those yet to fall, and in war the screams are loud and harsh, and in peace the wail is so drawn out we tell ourselves we hear nothing. And so this music is a lament, and I am doomed to hear its bittersweet notes for a lifetime. Show me a God that does not demand mortal suffering. Show me a God that celebrates diversity, a celebration that embraces even non-believers and is not threatened by them. Show me a God who understands the meaning of peace in life, not in death. I think, with that brief little snippet of a song that's not even written in verse, I think Fiddler sums up the sentiments and the themes that Erikson took 10 books to most effectively convey to the audience. I think if you didn't want to read, this amazing 10-book series for some odd reason, I think this little snippet will perfectly sum up his themes of compassion, his thoughts on religion and tradition, and how it can sometimes get in the way of compassion. And yeah, and I that's why he's my favorite bard character of all time. So tell me who your favorite bards are. I know I forgot a ton of them, and I think next week, probably around the same time next week, maybe Sunday, maybe Monday, Tuesday, I don't know. I'll be releasing I was gonna do top 10 fighters, but now that I'm thinking about it, I might do like a top 10 berserker type characters, and then a top 10 like classically trained swordsman type characters, or I may just do top 10 fighter characters. But I feel like that's you know such a broad thing to choose 10 from, so I don't know. Either way, you will be getting a top 10 next week. But yep, please like, comment, subscribe if you feel like it. If you don't, peace.